what do you say when somebody is their capacity, like you just reach the end of their capacity and then they behave badly, or you need them to move into a different space of capacity? How do you do that? Right.
Yeah.
So this is how you parent kids.
Mm-hmm.
For real. This is how you help your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they can give you that help too. So what do I need when I'm at capacity? I need somebody to lovingly say to me, hey, I love you. I want to talk about this when we can both be calm. It seems like we need to take a break from the conversation. And that's what I need somebody to do for me when I'm at capacity and I can't see that. And so when we're dealing with somebody else, let's do that for them. Let's help them in their relationship, in our relationship. Let's provide a boundary of zero communication when we're emotional, and we lovingly put a pause there. And then we come back to it. Hey, it's now a good time. Oh, I'm still not ready. Okay, somebody with low capacity, not gonna be able to have that conversation for a couple of days. You know, you got
Right.
somebody with high capacity, they'll be like, yeah, I just overreacted. I'm good, 20 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you you gotta help.
Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. My name is Shai, and I'm here with Nina. Our mission is to help you, Christian man or woman, navigate conflict and build connection so you can have a thriving marriage. Today, we are discussing what to say when fatal or final language is used in conflict. So, if you've been married longer than 2 seconds, you've probably questioned your decision at times. You know, on good days, that probably doesn't happen, but certainly on the bad days, you've at least had that thought. So sometimes those thoughts actually move into words, and then those words can become very damaging. So we want to talk about that moment when your thoughts become your words, and then your words even may become your actions, and then what to say. Nina, what are your thoughts around damaging language that can really present something that feels like the end of the world?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was sitting here thinking, you said 2 seconds, and I thought, oh, I did pretty good. I got like 2 months. And I remember saying, I think I married the wrong person. And I hear that all the time from women. And what I didn't know, well, and men too, honestly, like in the couples work I do, that is a thing that shows up both sides of the fence. And sometimes, with a young couple, it's there because they don't know. Yeah, in this age of internet stuff, we probably do know this, but back, in the dark ages when I got married, I didn't know that Twitter pated happy, can't see straight, can't eat, sleep, just think of you all the time. That thing wears off. That's called limerence. And, you get 18 months of that if you're lucky, and you're spending most of it dating, and then you get married, and then what have I done? And, and those things that were cute at first are now annoyances. And yeah, there's not a lot of depth around that other than, oh, I did the wrong thing. And what's hilarious is it doesn't matter whether you're Christian or not, that comes up, and everybody says, oh, I feel led by God to marry this person, and God's confirmed this, and they did, premarital counseling. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. When that feeling goes, sometimes that awareness is, I married the wrong person. When that definitely shows up, and you hear this from people that married 7 years to 37 years. I mean, I'm not kidding. I have a 42-year married client. The marriage is 42 years. And I heard her say at one point, I think I just married the wrong person.
Hmm.
And yeah, the first decade and a half was, I'm doing what God told me to do. But, she's been questioning the marriage for about 30 years. That's legit. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not because any of that's true.
Right.
Right?
Right.
What's true is that you're miserable. Like that's That's what's true there. I married the wrong person. I did it for these reasons. Yeah, whatever. You have this person now. That's your reality. Live in it. I mean, there's people in different cultures that marry people that they've never met.
That's
and it
right.
works out fine. They crank out kids, they end up in love. I mean, it's actually sometimes I think it might be better, but hello, because their parents actually have brains, right? And they can pick them well. Now I sound like I'm criticizing Western culture, which I am a bit, but the honesty in that is that nobody's lost their mind due to hormones that say, oh, you could breed successfully. There's just wisdom in that. And so the point is that, reality, you need to live in it, and you need to accept the fact that what you're really saying is you're unhappy. that's
Yes.
true.
Yes. And it's not all encompassing of the entire marriage. Usually it's based on what's been happening in the last few months or even few years.
Yep.
So it's so interesting that we get to that place where we're just ready to throw it all away.
Yeah, catastrophizing. It's all bad, black and white thinking. One of the neat things, Shanti Feldhahn, in one of her research-based books, I think it's Highly Happy Marriages or something like that, one of her pieces of data is that couples that stick it out in the misery, 5 years later, they're still married and they're happier. And that's no joke, because you got to grow up. You got to figure out how to do conflict. You can bail on this relationship you're in now where you can't figure it out, right? Like, go ahead, but you're going to spend a lot of money to just end up exactly where you are. Like, that's how that works. And on top of that, if you cranked out kids with this person, now you got this complicated, you still have them around. Like, you're not escaping anything. So might as well stick it out and learn what is it in us. Because I know, and nobody likes to hear that, but there's a thing in us that makes us bad at this. We've been doing this for over 15 years now. I've been in the communication field for over 30. And I am telling you, we are in our own way most of the time. Oof. And that could be fixed. I know. Sorry. Are you okay? I'm sorry.
It was just like, I feel like, the voice of God, basically, your own way. I mean, and it's true. I mean, what we're talking about is not new. It's sin, basically, if we want to just be honest. And that's been around since the very beginning. So.
Yeah. And I want to couch all of this with, because that all sounds like I'm so arrogant and stuff. And like, I know everything. Well, I've been that arrogant person. Like, I married a wonderful man and half destroyed our marriage myself, because I thought I knew everything and how he should be, which then put me in the camp of every other person on the planet who's ever been married. They think they're the genius and their spouse is wrong. Like, that's how that works. And it was probably even worse with me because I've got a stupid master's degree in communication. I live in the communication industry. I've been working in this industry for 50 years practically, because my dad threw me in front of a microphone at 3. So here we are. And I think I'm right. Yeah, no, Nina, God jerked me by the back of the neck in the most loving, and that sounded really painful, but it wasn't. He had to get my attention to say, you know what, sweetheart, you're contributing to the problem just as much. You're not that neat. I love you, but you're not what you think you are. And it was pride, like you're saying. We are in our own way, even when we do a lot of things well, right? That's the truth.
Well, all right. I don't know that do we need to finish? Because I
don't know if we have any listeners left at this point.
Oh man. So if you haven't figured it out by now, what we want you guys to walk away with is the truth. And maybe if there are some things we can say that will help get us to that truth a little quicker, we'll try to help you with that as well. But this is hard stuff. It's nothing new under the sun. Every couple, I would bet, has been here. So the good news is that you're not alone and there is a solution. So before we get into this discussion, I just want to remind our listeners that we have a website, greaterimpact.org, where you can download a free PDF. And we think it'll help you out with these scenarios that we talk about every week. So if you have time, check us out in your free time. All right, so back to our conversation. what we want you guys, as I said, to walk away with is some tips on what to say when things just get fatal and final and it feels like there's just no hope and everybody's ready to throw in the towel. If you don't do this well, you're probably going to make things worse, react badly, and yeah, if it's even possible for it to get worse, which I'm sure it is, you know, that's likely what you'll do instead of, you know, the right thing, which is to look internally. I was watching a show recently and there was a woman as a guest and she was telling the host about her relationship and how she kept running into being called needy or being viewed as needy by her partner. Mm-hmm. And it was like she was asking him for simple things, but they were made, she was being made to feel like it was too much. And so she finally got to the point where she stopped asking, and eventually that relationship fizzled because she couldn't be herself in the relationship. Mm-hmm. What she realized is that there were just different capacities and tolerances for having hard conversations. Mm-hmm. And I find that sometimes is often the issue is whether you grew up in a family where conflict was avoided or where there was a lot of conflict. Sometimes we come into our own relationships with those different tolerance levels and it affects our approach, right, to how we handle hard things. So I wanted to get your thoughts around that and if that is a thing and maybe how to address that if you're aware of it, because I know you first have to become aware of it.
Yeah.
But if you are aware of it, is there something to say that can help move things forward?
Oh, man. Yeah. So capacity is a huge thing. So you have somebody that has a lot of capacity for conflict or a lot of capacity for debate, right? Mm-hmm. They're almost inflappable, right? They're just calm and can handle disagreement. And if they were to do the Big Five personality index test, they probably come off as kind of a disagreeable person because they're not too worried about they'll say what they actually think, which that's kind of cool, right? And when you get into relationships where somebody's super agreeable, sometimes you can have that people pleasing be way too high, and they'll often have a lower capacity for conflict. Mm-hmm. Now that's not always the case, but if you look at the Big Five, there's definitely a difference there in how people approach differences of opinion and how to navigate something when there's a difference. So if let's say this gal that you're mentioning, right, the guy that she's with has a very low capacity for any kind of request towards him. Mm-hmm. That's indicative of having low self-esteem. He can't handle not being right. He can't handle, and I don't know the story, so I don't know him either, but a lot of times this is what you see with people with low capacity. They're fragile. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with that, you got to recognize this is not about me. This person is really easily triggered. There's a lot of baggage there. And honestly, good for her that it fizzled. Because if she wants to be seen in a relationship, she needs to be with somebody that can handle seeing her. There's that. Now, what do you do with people? The audience is like, well, I married somebody and here we are, and that sucks. You're right. It does. But what do you do with that? Like, how do you help the other person get into a different space? Mm-hmm. And how do you help them have more capacity, right? So capacity is really it's a reflection of safety in the relationship. So if I'm masterful at creating safety for another person, I'm going to break down a big concept into something smaller. And I'm not going to, like, let's say I want to move to New York and start a dance company. And that's not been anything anybody's ever talked about in our relationship whatsoever. Okay. And this is also a thing I'd never do. But let's say I wanted something that's completely out there. My spouse has no idea or whatever. It's just wise to start small. Mm-hmm. And maybe you'd go to a dance production together, or maybe you'd take a business management class together, or an entrepreneur class, or read, even smaller than that would be, hey, let's read a book together on entrepreneurism. So what do you do in a conflict situation? Well, let's say you have, this is a thing, you always see values conflicts in marriages, and they're over all sorts of things, right? You think you know this person, you think you have the same values. No, you don't. You just don't. You might value relationship, and he might value showing up at soccer on time. We've talked about this in one of our other episodes. Doesn't mean that either of you are wrong, but you have to navigate that. And how do you do it? Well, it's through negotiation, and it's through creating safety. So if I have a high capacity for conflict and I'm dealing with somebody with a low capacity for conflict, I can tell they have a low capacity because they're going to stonewall. They're going to be aggressive in their communication, like mean. They'll say mean things. They'll hit below the belt. They'll ignore it. They'll be passive aggressive. You're not dealing with somebody that's got capacity, right? So they do everything they can possibly do. It was like this horse I was riding today. I wanted him to go down this one little trail, and he's like, no, let's go over here. No, let's go over here. I tried to go him straight down the trail. He's like, no, I don't want to go do that. And so I had to get him worked into that space by going over to the left first, and then we crossed over and we went to the right, and we navigated sideways down the hill. Well, we got there, but I had to meet him where he was at, because if I just said, no, this is what we're doing, he would have balked and I could have ended up on the ground, that would have been a big fight. So you got to be wise in how you choose to interact with somebody, and capacity is something that you can see by somebody else's responses and reactions.
Yeah. Well, what if you're only 1 year in and you don't see it? I mean, because that's a thing where it's like the way that you've related in your family isn't working in your marriage. It's like
pretty typical. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because it takes time, I feel like, to get to that awareness that, this person doesn't have the same capacity, or I don't have the same capacity.
Yeah, no joke.
And like you said, it doesn't mean that either of us are wrong. It's just, okay, now how do we fix it? But you have to get there first. So how do you even get there to where it's like, this is a capacity issue and not a I married the wrong person issue?
Yeah. So first you have to suffer.
That's not what I wanted to hear.
Well, because I mean, if you think, like, I'm reading this book on awareness. I don't know where it is. I'm reading a new book on self-awareness. And basically people become self-aware through pain. Yeah. And it's like, you might have a high capacity for pain. That's actually a problem. In this space, it's a problem, because it means you can put up with a lot. And that, I'm joking as I say that, but it's actually really true.
Yeah.
And you look at people that have had horrific childhood trauma, sexual trauma as children, violence, abuse, just satanic ritual abuse. I mean, those people have a massive capacity for aberrant behavior. A lot of them become therapists or end up in helping fields because they've endured a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of making a joke, but not at that expense. But the reality is that it does. And then if you have a high capacity for suffering, it's going to take you a while to become self-aware. Like you're not going to have self-awareness easily. But it's something you can learn, like, for real. It is. And so oh gosh, we're back to that pride thing that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. When we're dealing with conflict, when things are, we have to look at ourselves. That is what self-awareness is. It's like, what am I doing that's making this worse? And we walk people through this prayer process. That's just incredible. And in that, the Lord gently often reveals to people, hey, I know that this person said this mean thing to you and did that terrible thing and didn't show up or whatever it was. And absolutely. And he brings comfort and he loves you and he normalizes that experience. And then when you ask him, what else is also true here? He'll say something like, what were you doing right before that happened? And then that's a moment of us going, well, what was I doing right before that? Oh, I said something that, set them off. Okay, what was that? What was going on in me that I did that? And suddenly my focus is off of that person's reaction to what I actually started. Like that is a thing that happens so much more than people have any clue about. For real. And so we can look at our own behavior as contributing. And the exciting thing about this is that when you have that level of awareness, you suddenly are no longer a victim. Because you can choose how you're going to, you know, how you probably got a rough idea how somebody might respond because they've done it 28 other times. And then you step into this space of, okay, how can I show up differently? So for your 1-year married couple, the question would be, what am I doing right before they do that? You know, be a grown up, take your eyes off of them, look at the plank in your own eye, because that's what's there. Hard to do until you've suffered enough that finally, okay, everything I've tried to blame them and get them to take ownership, that's not working. What can I do differently? That's when relationships start to change.
Which is usually year 10 or 15.
Yeah, maybe, right? If you make it that long.
If you make it that long.
Yeah. And the other place in that too is, do I have capacity for self-awareness for myself? Right? Because if you have a high capacity for self-awareness, then you are typically pretty humble and you're pretty open to being wrong. You don't need other people to think the way that you do. You're okay with people being wherever they're at for however long they need to be. And you can create situations where you get invited into a space to provide help or advice or whatever, but you don't just randomly give it because you don't have to control everything so you can be okay. So that capacity thing is reflective of a whole lot of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, this is huge. So, okay. Wow, so much we talked about today. It sounds like there are solutions. That's what I'm taking away. But first of all, there has to be some awareness established, which might require suffering, which no one wants to hear.
Right. Sorry. Well, you know me, I go right to who
truth.
I can do something about, which is me first, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, and this is why half the people are listening, I hope we didn't lose them. But you know, what do you say when somebody is their capacity, like you just reach the end of their capacity and then they behave badly, or you need them to move into a different space of capacity? How do you do that, right?
Yeah.
So this is how you parent kids.
Mm-hmm.
For real. This is how you help your spouse. And hopefully they can give you that help too. So what do I need when I'm at capacity? I need somebody to lovingly say to me, hey, I love you. I want to talk about this when we can both be calm. It seems like we need to take a break from the conversation. And that's what I need somebody to do for me when I'm at capacity and I can't see that. And so when we're dealing with somebody else, let's do that for them. Let's help them in their relationship, in our relationship. Let's provide a boundary of zero communication when we're emotional, and we lovingly put a pause there. And then we come back to it. Hey, it's now a good time. Oh, I'm still not ready. Okay, somebody with low capacity, not gonna be able to have that conversation for a couple of days. You know, you got somebody with high capacity, they'll be like, yeah, I just overreacted. I'm good. 20 minutes later. So you gotta help.
Is it ever wise to ask, are you at capacity?
Well, if you have that language worked in your relationship, yeah, I've had enough of this. I'm done. I've reached capacity here. I'm done.
Yeah.
And absolutely. If you can work that into your culture and your family, and that can be a cue word. It's kind of funny. Like I had a client that used the red zone. Are we in the red zone or something? It was something like that. And anybody could ask that question. Are we in the red zone of each other? And be like, oh yeah, we're in the red zone. Okay, well, let's take a break so we can get back to green,
Right. That's the thing. Like sometimes it's like, you're in the red and they're in the yellow.
Yeah.
And they're, they can go and you can't go anymore. So sometimes there has to be some awareness brought in, like, where are you? Are you at a 5 or a 10? If we keep going, or, that I think is very valuable to the relationship, because you can cause some damage.
Well, yeah. And we used to talk about this And this is why we tell people just, to ask, is this a good time to talk about XYZ?
Yeah.
And in Dr. Gottman's research on the University of Washington, they used to say, you got a 1 in 4 chance, but then they actually did studies around this stuff. Because if you think about it, I might be in a good place and you might not,
Right.
right? Or you might be in a good place and I might not. So
Right.
then maybe we're both in a bad place. And so maybe we're both in a good place. Like that's the one you're going for. Well,
Right.
they discovered that it's actually not 25%. It's around 10.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how the math on that all works out, but in the majority of times when people ask that question, is this a good time?
It's not.
You have about a 1 in 10 chance, 1 in 9 chance of hitting it. Yeah, it's good for both people. I mean, in reality, that being true.
Mhm.
So asking the question, hey, and it's kind of like to your point earlier, are we in the green? Are you green? I'm green. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm kind of yellow at the moment, but I'll try. And if I get orange, I'll let you know. Like, fair enough. Let's do it. So
Making me think of the movie Inside Out with the different color creatures that
oh yeah,
represent
yeah.
emotions. It's
Yeah.
very applicable to this
Yeah,
conversation.
no kidding. Yeah, fair enough. But we have to be sensitive to the other person's capacity. And the hard thing about this is everybody's got different capacity for different things. It's not just conversation. Like, and men are going to hate this statement and women are going to cheer, but women only have so much capacity for exhaustion. you know
Oh, for sure.
yeah, so that means we only have so much capacity for the workload at home and then sex. So there's got to
Mhm.
be this capacity thing is really a bigger issue
Mhm.
than just conversation and conflict. It plays out into everything, and there's triggering in everything because we're wounded in everything. And so what's the answer? Well, it's always the same: Jesus. Because if you're walking in the fruit of the spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control, you're not going to be all about what you want when you want it. You're going to be about what's good for the right now, what's good for my partner, what's good for the marriage. you know we're considering others more important than ourselves. We're considering ourselves in the conversation.
Mhm.
I'll ask, like I asked my horse to do that thing, but I wasn't going to put myself in danger to do that, right?
Mhm.
So, and in relationships, I'm not going to, give something that is going to be damaging to me or the relationship later. So you have to navigate, what does that mean? And it looks different in a lot of different contexts and
Yeah.
in every relationship. So that's why coaching is useful, because we can talk in generalities and have some examples, but what really matters is what's the specifics of your situation,
Right.
and then what's God saying about that? And those
Right.
are answers you can have. Yeah, that's the thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this. I have so many takeaways. One of the things that I'm hearing, I don't know if this is God, but it's like almost like we have to assume we know nothing when we come into a relationship. You know nothing about the person, even though you think you do and you love them and they're an answered prayer. You really don't know how to do life with them. So you almost have to just assume nothing. And I think the other major takeaway is have some self-awareness, because chances are you're both contributing blindly and unintentionally to the problem that feels fatal and feels final, but really isn't. And then also, one of the things that I love is that you said try to create a safe space. I can't emphasize that enough. We have to figure out what feels safe for us, but
Mhm,
also what feels safe for our partner, and
mhm,
really nurture that so that when things feel fatal and final, we know how to expand the capacity
mhm.
for the relationship, really, is what you're doing. So, lots of goodies today. I hope you guys came away with some tips on what to say in these really hard conversations and difficult moments. We have more of these conversations on our channel. If you check out our next episode, there's going to be even more information around how to handle conflict. So, if you have time, watch the next video and We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.